A team has located the wreck of Quest, which is the ship used by Sir Ernest Shackleton on his final expedition to the Antarctic.
The autonomous drone descends for hours, pushing through 10,000 feet of crushing, near-freezing blackness. Its sonar pings, painting a picture of the seabed. Then, something appears. Not rocks, but the sharp, unmistakable outline of a wooden ship. It's the Endurance, Shackleton's lost vessel. But the thing nobody tells you is what the high-definition cameras saw next. The ship is perfectly intact, but it's not alone. What the drone captured clinging to its rails and peering from its portholes is the stuff of deep-sea nightmares. Finding the impossible wreck. For 107 years, it was a ghost story. The legendary ship of Sir Ernest Shackleton, the Endurance, had been swallowed whole by the Antarctic ice, vanishing without a trace. Finding it was considered the single most difficult underwater search in human history. You see, the Weddell Sea isn't just an ocean, it's a moving, grinding puzzle of thick sea ice, even in its summer. But in 2022, a mission called Endurance 2 set out to do the impossible. On board the South African icebreaker, S.A. Agulhasthi, a team of the world's best marine archaeologists and technicians, had a secret weapon. They weren't just looking for a wreck. They were hunting a legend. Their tools were a pair of advanced underwater drones, or autonomous underwater vehicles, named Sabertooth. These machines, built by Saab, were state-of-the-art, costing millions of dollars each. They could operate untethered from the ship, diving to depths of over 13,000 feet and navigating on their own beneath the treacherous, shifting ice pack. The thing nobody tells you about this kind of search is the pressure. Not just the water pressure, but the mental pressure. The search box was a massive 150 square miles, and the team was burning through time and money. They faced blizzards, freezing temperatures, and the constant threat of their multi-million-dollar ship getting trapped in the ice, just like the Endurance did. To put it mildly, the conditions were brutal. The team leader, the veteran polar geographer Dr. John Shears, called it the most challenging shipwreck search ever undertaken. They searched for weeks. The drone would dive for days at a time, scanning the featureless seabed, sending back sonar data. Nothing. Then, with time running out, the drone lost contact. For hours, the team stared at a blank screen, fearing their expensive machine was lost. Just another victim of the Weddell Sea. But the Sabertooth was programmed to return to its last known point if contact was lost. It reappeared, and when the team downloaded its data, their jaws hit the floor. There it was. On March 5th, 2022, exactly 100 years to the day after Shackleton's funeral, the drone's sonar had passed over a shadow. The team sent the drone back down, this time with its high-definition cameras blazing. What it captured terrified the world. The drone's lights cut through 2 miles of pitch-black water. The Endurance wasn't a pile of scattered planks. It was a ghost ship. It was sitting upright on the seabed, almost perfectly preserved, as if it had sunk only yesterday. The cold, dark water, at nearly 10,000 feet deep, had protected it. The pressure down there is over 4,500 pounds per square inch, an environment so hostile it would instantly destroy a human. But the real wow factor, the truly chilling part, was the reason for its preservation. The frigid Antarctic waters are too cold for the tiny wood-eating organisms known as shipworms that devour wrecks in other oceans. The Endurance had been sitting in a sterile, dark tomb, but it wasn't alone. This is what stunned scientists. The drone's cameras showed the ship was teeming with life, but not any life you'd recognize. The entire wreck was colonized by bizarre, alien-like creatures. Stalked sea squirts looking like long, pale fingers waved in the drone's current. Bright yellow sea anemones, sea lilies, and strange filter feeders had attached themselves to every surface. The ship's name, Endurance, was still perfectly visible on the stern, surrounded by these eerie, deep-sea organisms. The ship's wheel was intact. Boots and crockery were scattered on the deck, untouched. The drone glided over the deck, peering into the blackness of the mess hall, capturing a scene frozen in time, yet terrifyingly alive with creatures from the abyss. The drone proved the ship was there, but its perfect state only highlighted the horror of what its crew had to escape, heading into the white. So, why was this ship even there? What many overlooked is that by 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton was already a global superstar, a rock star of the heroic age of exploration. He had been to Antarctica twice before and had come within just 97 miles of the South Pole, farther than anyone in history at that time. But he was restless. The pole itself had been claimed, so he set his sights on what he called the one great main object of Antarctic journeying remaining, the first ever land crossing of the entire continent. His plan was bold, to put it mildly. He would sail one ship, the Endurance, to the Weddell Sea, land a team, and march over 1,800 miles across the pole to the Ross Sea, where a second ship, the Aurora, would be waiting. It was the grand finale of polar exploration. He secured funding, and as the legend goes, put out an ad that read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success." He handpicked a crew of 28 men, including scientists, sailors, and a photographer named Frank Hurley, whose images would become immortal. And then there was the ship. The Endurance was a work of art. She was a 144-foot, three-masted wooden ship, but she was built for war with the unmistakable ice. Her keel was made from 4 solid pieces of oak, and her bow, designed to ram the ice, was over 4 feet thick. Shackleton himself had overseen her construction in Norway, where she was originally named Polaris. But Shackleton, a man of intense charisma and belief in fate, renamed her. He took the new name from his own family motto, Fortitudine Vincimus, by endurance we conquer. In August 1914, on the very eve of the First World War, the Endurance set sail. The world was about to erupt in conflict, but Shackleton's expedition was given the blessing of the British government. They sailed south, into the unknown, towards the most dangerous and unpredictable body of water on the planet. But Shackleton's motto would be tested in a way he could never have imagined. Abandoned ship. The mission began to unravel almost immediately. By January 1915, the Endurance was deep in the Weddell Sea, pushing through the dense pack ice. This sea is a notorious trap. The currents and winds spin the ice in a giant clockwise circle, compacting it. The Endurance fought bravely, but the ice was thicker than anyone had anticipated. On January 19th, the ice closed in around the ship, like an almond in a chocolate bar. As one crewman wrote, at first Shackleton was not worried. He wrote in his log, "I have been prepared for evil conditions in the Weddell Sea." The men simply prepared to spend the winter trapped, assuming the spring thaw would release them. But not all things are what they seem. The spring thaw never came. Instead, the ice just got thicker. For 10 long months, they were prisoners. The Endurance, locked in the ice, became a drifting ghost ship. They drifted over 1,500 miles, completely at the mercy of the ice pack. The men tried to keep their spirits up. They played hockey on the ice, cared for their 69 sled dogs, and listened to Shackleton read stories. But all around them, the pressure was building. The wow factor here is the sound. The men described the ice pressure as a living monster. It would make noises like fireworks, artillery, and the groaning of giants. The ice wasn't just holding the ship, it was beginning to squeeze it. On October 24th, 1915, the end began. A massive pressure ridge, a wave of solid ice, rose up and struck the ship. The crewman, Walter Howe, described the sound, a groan and a shudder. The ship's wooden beams, each over a foot thick, began to snap like twigs. Shackleton wrote, "She was being crushed. The noise was deafening." The stern of the ship was lifted clear out of the water. Water began pouring in. Shackleton, seeing his dream disintegrate, remained calm. He simply walked on deck and gave the order, "Abandon ship." For 3 more weeks, the ship fought, but she was broken. On November 21st, 1915, she finally slipped beneath the ice and was gone. But here's the kicker, the single most important act of the entire sinking. The ship's navigator, Captain Frank Worsley, was a man of almost superhuman skill. As the ship was groaning and sinking, he grabbed his sextant and chronometer. In the middle of that frozen wasteland, with the ship dying beneath him, he took readings from the sun and calculated their exact position. He wrote down the coordinates. It was this act of incredible precision that, 107 years later, allowed the Endurance 22 team to find the wreck just 4 miles from Worsley's last logged position. The ship was gone. The men were now stranded on floating ice, thousands of miles from help. The James Caird now, the story shifts from exploration to pure survival. 28 men were stranded on a sheet of floating ice, with only 3 small wooden lifeboats, their sleds, and the supplies they had managed to pull from the sinking Endurance. Their situation was, to put it mildly, hopeless. They were in the most remote place on Earth. No one knew where they were, and no rescue was coming. Shackleton's true genius now came to light. His goal was no longer to cross a continent. It was to keep every single one of his men alive. They made a desperate camp on the ice, which they called Ocean Camp. They were forced to make difficult decisions, letting go of personal items and even their sled dogs to conserve food. For months, they drifted on the ice, their floating home slowly melting and breaking apart beneath them. By April 1916, the ice floe they were on finally split in two. Shackleton gave the order to take to the lifeboats. For 5 agonizing days, the men rowed and sailed through a freezing ocean filled with grinding ice. They were soaked, frostbitten, and close to despair. They finally landed on a tiny, desolate, uninhabited rock called Elephant Island. It was the first solid ground they had stood on in 497 days. But Elephant Island was just a different kind of prison. It was a barren, windswept mountain of rock, far from any shipping lanes. They were safe from the sea, but they would slowly perish from starvation. Shackleton knew there was only one chance, a 1 in a million shot. He would take the strongest of the lifeboats, the 22-foot James Caird, and 6 men. Their mission, to sail 800 miles across the most violent stretch of water on Earth, the Drake Passage, to a whaling station on the island of South Georgia. Many people are crazy about this part of the story, and for good reason. What followed is considered the single greatest small boat journey in history. For 16 days, Shackleton and his 5 companions, including the navigator Frank Worsley, were tossed by hurricane-force winds and 50-foot waves. These waves were so big that Worsley later wrote he mistook the first one for the sky clearing, before realizing it was a wall of water about to crash on them. They were constantly wet, freezing, and had to chip ice off the boat to stop it from sinking. Worsley navigated with a sextant, his hands raw, catching only 4 glimpses of the sun in over 2 weeks. Miraculously, they hit South Georgia. They had survived the 800-mile open boat journey, a miracle of navigation and endurance, only to be met with one final cruel joke. They had landed on the wrong side of South Georgia. The whaling station at Stromness, their single point of salvation, was a mere 22 miles away as the crow flies. But between them and that sanctuary lay the Allardyce Range, an unmapped, glacier-filled mountain range that spiked thousands of feet into the Antarctic sky. No human had ever accomplished the crossing. To sail the battered James Caird around the island's storm-lashed coast was impossible. The boat was shattered, and the men were too broken. The only path was over. Shackleton, Frank Worsley, and Tom Crean, the 3 strongest left, set out with nothing. They had no map, no tent, and only a carpenter's adze for an ice axe. They had screwed nails from the boat into the soles of their boots for grip. For 36 agonizing, non-stop hours, they climbed. They navigated by the dim glow of the moon on the ice, scaling frozen waterfalls and traversing crevasses that gaped like wounds in the glacier. They were soaked, frozen, and suffering from frostbite. At one point, trapped on a high ridge in a blinding fog, they knew that to stop moving was to die. In a legendary act of desperation, they coiled their short rope, sat on it, and slid nearly 1,000 feet down a black ice slope, risking utter annihilation for a chance at survival. When they finally staggered into the Stromness whaling station, they were unrecognizable. Their faces were caked in grime, black from blubber smoke, their hair matted and long, their clothes hanging in frozen ribbons. The hardened Norwegian whalers, men who knew Shackleton and Worsley, backed away in shock, staring at the wild apparitions who had seemingly walked out of the icy heart of the island. But Shackleton didn't rest. His first act was to organize a rescue. It would take 3 agonizing, failed attempts, each one turned back by the impenetrable pack ice surrounding Elephant Island. Finally, on the 4th try, he broke through. He stood on the bow of the rescue ship and counted the dark figures huddled on the beach. They were all there. He had not lost a single man. He saved his men, but the Endurance itself remained a legend, lost to the deep dark. A monument, not a monster. Let's go back to that drone footage. The moment those high-powered lights cut through the abyss, piercing the darkness 10,000 feet below the Antarctic ice, The title of this video, and so many others like it, promises that what the drone captured terrified the world. And it did, but not in the way you might think. When the first grainy images of the Endurance wreck began to circulate, the internet was bracing for a monster. People were waiting for the jump scare. They were expecting the giant squids, eye-peering from a dark porthole, or the shadowy form of some unknown leviathan guarding the wreck. After all, this is the most hostile, unexplored environment on Earth. If a kraken were to exist anywhere, it would be here, in the crushing blackness of the Weddell Sea. But the drone's high-definition footage showed nothing of the sort. There was no deep-sea monster. There was no curse. There was no kraken guarding its prize. The thing that is so terrifying, what the drone's footage showed in chilling, crystal-clear detail, is the environment itself. The Endurance wreck is a perfect time capsule, but it's a time capsule from a place that humans can never, ever visit. The footage isn't a horror movie. It's a window into an alien world. The terror is the crushing, absolute, and indifferent power of the deep ocean. Let's try to put this into perspective. The ship rests at 10,000 feet. At that depth, the pressure is 4,500 pounds per square inch. What does that even mean? It's a force we can barely comprehend. It's the equivalent of having a full-sized pickup truck balanced on a single postage stamp. It's a weight that would implode a military submarine not built for that depth. It would turn a human body into liquid in less than a second. This is not a place for us. This is not a place for anything that lives in the sun. And then there is the darkness. Not just dark like a room at night. This is a total, unending, and permanent absence of light. It is a psychological terror. The only photons to ever touch this wreck in over 100 years were the ones coming from the drone's own lights. Before that, and after the drone left, there is only pure, absolute black. This is the true monster. It isn't an animal that wants to eat you. It's a place that doesn't even know you exist, and whose very nature will erase you if you try. Then, there are the creatures. The drone's camera panned across the deck, and we saw them, pale, ghostly figures waving slowly in the non-existent current. Sea lilies, anemones, and strange, filter-feeding organisms that have claimed the Endurance as their home. They are terrifying, not because they are aggressive, but because they are the only things that can exist there. They are the true natives of this alien landscape. They thrive in the pressure and the cold that would kill us instantly. They are a haunting reminder that this part of our own planet is as alien and hostile to us as the surface of Mars. The drone captured a human artifact in a perfectly preserved alien world. The ship is so perfectly intact, it's breathtaking. The wood is not rotted, chewed apart by the microbes and worms that disintegrate wrecks in warmer waters. Here, in the near-freezing abyss, the ship is frozen in time. The name Endurance is still visible on the stern, the golden letters seemingly painted just last year. You can see the ship's wheel standing proudly. You can see boots, dishes, and the shattered glass of the portholes. It's not a wreck, it's a ghost, sitting silently on the seafloor, waiting for a crew that is never coming back. The preservation is so perfect that the ship has been designated as a historic site and monument under the Antarctic Treaty. This is crucial. This means it cannot be touched, salvaged, or disturbed in any way. The team didn't even recover a splinter of wood or a single nail. They simply scanned it, filmed it in stunning 4K, and left it exactly where it lay. It is a tomb, and it must be respected. What many overlooked in their hunt for a monster is that while the Endurance failed in its mission to cross Antarctica, it succeeded in its name. The ship itself endured the crushing ice for months before it finally sank. Its crew, led by the legendary Ernest Shackleton, endured an impossible, year-long journey over the ice to find rescue, with not a single life lost. And now, the wreck itself will endure for centuries in its frozen, dark tomb, a silent monument to the man who refused to give up. The terrifying discovery wasn't a monster, it was the pristine, haunting, and beautiful realization of what endurance truly means. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. After seeing what lurks in the deep and how it has claimed our history, do you think we should even be exploring these places? Let us know below.